A funny language barrier story. Have you ever been completely lost for words? Not because you were shocked, but because you literally couldn't speak the language? Imagine trying to ask for something simple, like directions to a famous bakery, and ending up on a wild goose chase involving confused locals, strange gestures, and maybe even a donkey? It sounds like a movie scene, right? But sometimes real life is funnier than fiction, especially when you're navigating a new country with only a phrasebook and a hopeful smile. Today, we have a hilarious extended story about exactly that, a funny adventure caused by a classic case of language barriers. It follows our intrepid traveler, Leo, on a quest that proves more complicated than he ever imagined. We've packed this longer version with even more details, more funny moments, and lots of useful vocabulary and phrases repeated naturally throughout the narrative, so you can really immerse yourself and learn while enjoying the ride. If you love learning English through fun and engaging stories, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss our weekly tales. Ready? Let's dive deep into Leo's legendary quest for the Sunshine Buns. Leo wasn't your typical hero. He didn't wear a cape or fight dragons. His brand of heroism involved navigating confusing bus schedules in unfamiliar cities, deciphering menus, written in elegant but entirely alien scripts, and surviving encounters with notoriously grumpy taxi drivers, armed only with a polite smile and a few mangled phrases. Leo considered himself an adventurer of the everyday, a seeker of small thrills, found in the heart of foreign lands. His past adventures included accidentally ordering fermented fish soup in Iceland. He'd thought he was asking for lamb stew, and spending an entire afternoon in Tokyo trying to find a specific type of collectible toy, only to discover he was in the wrong district entirely, thanks to misreading a map symbol. He collected these mishaps like souvenirs, funny stories to tell his friends back home. This time, his compass pointed towards Poggibonsi. He'd read about it on an obscure travel blog, described not as a major tourist hub, but as a whisper of old Europe. A tiny, charming village nestled in rolling green hills, seemingly untouched by the frantic pace of modern life. The blog post raved about its atmosphere, its winding cobblestone streets, its terracotta roofs glowing warmly under the Italian sun. But the true highlight, the pièce de résistance according to the enthusiastic blogger, whose post was titled, "Forget Rome, Find Heaven in Poggibonsi's Sunshine Buns," was a hidden bakery producing pastries of supposedly mythical quality, the legendary Sunshine Buns. Leo was instantly captivated. The name alone sparked his imagination. Sunshine Buns. What could they be? He pictured golden, fluffy clouds of dough, perhaps filled with a bright, zesty lemon curd, or maybe glazed with apricot jam that shone like a tiny sun. The blogger described them with such reverence, a bite of pure, unadulterated happiness, like tasting a summer morning, that Leo knew he had to find them. This wasn't just about pastry, it was a quest. A delicious, slightly absurd quest. His tools for this particular expedition were standard Leo issue, a well-worn phrasebook filled with slightly outdated slang, a smartphone with a translation app known for its occasional poetic and wildly inaccurate flourishes, and an unshakable optimism that often served as his primary shield against travel chaos. His main vulnerability? Language. Leo's attempts at speaking foreign languages were unique. He possessed the enthusiastic volume of an opera singer warming up, but often lacked the crucial nuances of pronunciation. Words that should have sounded smooth and melodic often came out sounding like rocks tumbling down a hill. He knew this, but it rarely stopped him from trying. He stepped out from the cool, dark interior of his small guest house, blinking in the surprisingly bright morning sun. Poggibonsi unfolded before him like a pop-up storybook illustration. Terracotta tiles warmed under the already potent sun. Laundry fluttered like colorful flags from window lines strung between buildings, and the air hummed with a gentle symphony of distant church bells, cheerful Italian chatter drifting from open windows, and the buzzing drone of a lone scooter somewhere nearby. The streets, paved with smooth, uneven cobblestones that had likely felt centuries of footsteps, twisted and turned in ways that defied logic. Narrow alleys branched off unexpectedly, promising shortcuts but likely delivering only more confusion. Archways, looking remarkably similar, punctuated the stone walls, leading into hidden courtyards or squares. It was undeniably charming, but also a potential labyrinth for the directionally challenged. Perfect. Getting slightly lost was inevitable. Embracing it was part of the Leo travel philosophy. Today, however, purposeful wandering was required. Objective. Sunshine Buns. He consulted his phrasebook, flipping through the food and directions section. "Excuse me, where is the bakery?" Offered helpfully. "Scusi, dove il panificio? Or perhaps forno?" The book listed both, helpfully adding that forno often meant an older, traditional bread oven or bakery. That sounded more appropriate for legendary buns, didn't it? More rustic, more authentic forno it was. He practiced it under his breath a few times, trying to mimic the imaginary accent he thought Italians might possess. "Scusi, dove il forno?" He winced slightly. It still sounded less like Italian and more like someone asking for furniture. Oh well, confidence was key. His first potential informant materialized just down the street. An elderly woman perched on a weathered stone bench. She was surrounded by a fluttering cloud of pigeons, cooing and jostling for the crumbs. She scattered meticulously from a small paper bag. Her face, etched with a network of fine wrinkles, held a certain serene quality, like a map of a long and interesting life. She seemed approachable, perhaps a keeper of local secrets. Leo took a deep breath, smoothed down his t-shirt, and approached, with his most winning, non-threatening tourist smile. "Scusi," he began, bowing his head slightly in what he hoped was a gesture of respect. "Dove il forno?" He pointed vaguely in the direction he thought bakeries might generally lie, which was, essentially, everywhere and nowhere. The woman looked up from her avian companions, her eyes, bright and intelligent, taking him in slowly. She paused her crumb scattering. "Ah, forno," she repeated, her voice soft and papery. She then squinted, looking past Leo down the narrow street. "Si, forno. Bello," she murmured, nodding slowly. She then gestured with a slightly shaky, knobbly finger, pointing vaguely down the street to his left. "La," she said simply. Then, as if her duty was done, she immediately turned back to her pigeons, resuming her scattering with focused intensity. "Andate piccolini," she cooed, apparently having a more engaging conversation with the birds. "Grazie, grazie mille," Leo chirped, practically vibrating with premature success. First attempt, first direction. This was going to be easier than, he thought. The legendary buns were practically within reach. He set off confidently down the street the woman had indicated, picturing the warm golden pastry awaiting him. He walked past a shop overflowing with colorful ceramics, plates, jugs, and decorative tiles painted with bright lemons and olives. He peered into the window of a tiny, quiet post office that looked like it hadn't changed in 50 years. Admired a fountain sculpted into the shape of a rather grumpy-looking fish, spitting a thin stream of water into a mossy basin. The street was charming, quiet, but distinctly lacking in bakery smells. He walked further, the street narrowing slightly. He passed doorways leading into cool, dark homes, glimpsing tiled floors and sturdy wooden furniture. Still no bakery. Finally, the street ended abruptly, not in a bustling square, not at a crossroads, but at a tall, imposing, ancient-looking wooden door. It was dark, heavy wood, studded with large iron bolts. It looked less like the entrance to a place selling Sunshine Buns, and more like the gateway to a medieval dungeon, or perhaps just a very, very old garage belonging to someone who valued their privacy. Definitely not a bakery. Leo sighed, the initial burst of optimism deflating like a punctured balloon. He leaned against the cool stone wall opposite the mysterious door. Okay, so the pigeon lady's directions were unhelpful. Maybe forno meant something else entirely? Maybe it meant old door? Or maybe she just enjoyed pointing tourists in random directions for her own quiet amusement while conversing with her feathered friends. He couldn't blame her, really. Minor setback, deep breaths, time for Plan B, universal language of mime. Gestures. Surely everyone understood gestures. Pointing at mouth, naf, food. Rubbing tummy, on, delicious. Pointing at sun. Sun. Making round shape. Bun. Simple. He scanned his surroundings for his next potential guide. A man, wearing slightly oil-stained overalls, was lovingly polishing a gleaming bright red scooter parked outside a small shop. The shop seemed to sell hardware, tools, ropes, and mysterious metal objects hung in the window. The man looked focused but perhaps approachable. Worth a shot. Leo put on his hopeful smile again and walked over. "Scusi," he started, then quickly abandoned words as potentially hazardous. He launched into his prepared routine. First, he pointed emphatically towards his open mouth. Then he patted his stomach vigorously, trying to convey hunger and anticipation of deliciousness. He puffed out his cheeks slightly, hoping to suggest fluffy. Next, recalling the crucial name, he pointed dramatically up towards the brilliant morning sun, squinting, slightly for effect. Finally, he made a large, round shape in the air with both hands, trying to evoke the image of a perfect bun. To ensure clarity, he repeated the sun point and the circle hands, adding an optimistic, questioning, "Sunshine bun." The man stopped, polishing his scooter mid-wipe. He stared at Leo, his brow furrowed in intense concentration, as if trying to decipher an incredibly complex code. He observed the mouth pointing, the enthusiastic stomach rubbing, the skyward gesture, the mid-air circle drawing. His eyes darted between Leo's face and his gesturing hands. Leo held his breath, hoping for the spark of recognition. Suddenly, the man's face cleared. His eyes lit up with the unmistakable glow of sudden, absolute understanding. "Ah, capito, soul," he exclaimed, nodding vigorously. He pointed up at the sun himself, mirroring Leo's gesture, then thumped his own chest. "Caldo, molto caldo. Hot, very hot." "Okay," Leo agreed, it was warm. Then the man pointed energetically down the street, in a completely different direction from the old woman's vague point and the dead-end door. He pointed towards a shop further down the road, its sign adorned with illustrations that looked suspiciously like light bulbs and electrical sockets. "Lampade, si, lampade," he repeated, gesturing towards the shop with encouraging enthusiasm, as if he'd just solved Leo's most pressing problem. Leo stared. Lampade. Lamps. The man thought his elaborate Sunshine Bun mime meant he needed to buy a lamp. Maybe a sun lamp because he kept pointing at the sun? Or perhaps he thought Leo was complaining about the heat, sol as caldo, and was suggesting he buy an electric fan from the electrical supply store. This was not just unhelpful, it was spectacularly wrong. Leo felt a giggle bubble up, but suppressed. He managed a weak smile and a strained grazie. He backed away slowly, making a mental note not to investigate the electrical supply store, unless he suddenly developed an urgent need for light bulbs or extension cords. His stomach let out. A low rumble, a mournful protest against the lack of buns. The quest was proving significantly more challenging than anticipated. Right. Drastic times called for technological measures. Time to deploy the translation app, despite its known eccentricities. He found a relatively quiet corner leaning against a sun-warmed wall and carefully typed his request into his phone. "Where is the bakery famous for Sunshine Buns?" He double-checked the spelling. Looked okay. He hit translate. The app spun its little digital wheel for a moment, consulting its vast, mysterious databases of language. Then, it presented the translation with digital confidence. "Dov'è il luogo di cottura celebrato per I panini di gioia solare?" Leo read it. He didn't speak Italian fluently, but panini di gioia solare sounded excessively poetic. Solar joy buns? It had a certain ring to it, he had to admit. But was it likely to be understood? Probably not. Still, it was better than his own pronunciation or his failed mime attempts. He had to try. He spotted his next targets near the grumpy fish fountain he'd passed earlier. A group of 3 teenagers were lounging on the stone edge, engrossed in their smartphones, occasionally showing each other funny videos and laughing. Teenagers often knew the local shortcuts, the hidden gems, the places adults didn't frequent, and they definitely understood technology. This could be it. He approached them cautiously, feeling slightly foolish holding out his phone like a supplicant. "Scusi," he said, holding the phone so they could see the screen displaying the slightly absurd translation. "Dov'è il luogo di cottura celebrato per I panini di gioia solare?" One of the teenagers, a girl with bright pink streaks in her hair, read it aloud slowly. Her eyes widened, and then she dissolved into uncontrollable giggles. She showed the phone to her friends. Soon all 3 were laughing heartily. Not in a mean way, it seemed, but with genuine amusement. "Panini di gioia solare?" one of the boys repeated, wiping a tear from his eye. Solar joy buns? Che cosa? What is that? He looked at Leo, still chuckling. Never heard of solar joy buns. Another one added, maybe as a new happy bread. They seemed utterly charmed by the phrase. The girl with the pink hair, recovering slightly, looked at Leo sympathetically. Bakery? Pain? She tried in broken English, making a simple round shape with her hands, much clearer than Leo's earlier attempt. Leo nodded eagerly. See, bakery, buns. She conferred quickly with her friends in rapid-fire Italian, interspersed with more giggles about Gioia Solare. Finally, she pointed vaguely towards the main town square, the Piazza del Popolo. Maybe. Try the piazza, she suggested, shrugging. Big square, many shops. It wasn't a confident direction, more of a general suggestion for someone clearly lost in asking for mythical pastries. Leo sighed inwardly. Another vague point, this time towards the busiest part of the village. He thanked the teenagers, Grazi, who were still chuckling about solar joy buns as he walked away. His translation app, while providing entertainment, had failed him. Again. The piazza. Okay. Maybe it was hidden in plain sight. He trudged towards the main square, his earlier optimism now thoroughly eroded, replaced by a gnawing hunger and a growing sense of the absurd. The Piazza del Popolo was a whirlwind of activity. Market stalls were piled high with vibrant produce, ruby red tomatoes, glossy purple eggplants, enormous lemons. Others sold pungent cheeses, cured meats, leather bags, and cheap sunglasses. Tourists with maps consulted each other. Locals greeted friends with loud, cheerful calls. Children chased pigeons, perhaps relatives of the ones the old woman was feeding. And the air buzzed with 100 conversations. Leo scanned the perimeter of the square, his eyes searching desperately for any sign that remotely resembled a bakery. Cafes with outdoor seating? Yes. A gelateria? Yes. A pharmacy? A bank? A souvenir shop selling miniature grumpy fish fountains? All present. But a bakery, especially one special enough to be called the Sweet Sun Bakery or Harbor Solar Joy Buns. Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. He felt a wave of genuine despair wash over him. This was ridiculous. He'd followed 3 sets of directions, each more confusing than the last. He'd used words, gestures, technology. He'd been pointed to a dead end, an electrical shop, and now the chaotic main square, which clearly wasn't hiding a secret, legendary bakery. Was the blog post a complete fabrication? A cruel prank played on gullible travelers like himself? Was Poggibonsi secretly laughing at the tourist searching for non-existent Sunshine Buns? He slumped onto the edge of the grumpy fish fountain, feeling utterly defeated. He narrowly avoided a splash from the eternally grumpy stone fish. He pulled out his water bottle and took a long, lukewarm swig. Maybe he should just give up. Go to one of the cafes, order a standard cornetto and a cappuccino. Wouldn't be a sunshine bun, but it would be sustenance. It would be sensible. Giving up felt like failure, but continuing seemed like madness. Defeat tasted surprisingly bland and watery, as he sat there contemplating the merits of a plain croissant versus eternal hunger in pursuit of a myth. A distraction arrived in the form of a man leading a small, furry, and exceptionally stubborn-looking donkey on a thick rope. The donkey, laden with 2 woven baskets, ambled into the square and then stopped dead right in front of Leo, planting its hooves firmly on the cobblestones. It seemed particularly suspicious of the grumpy fish fountain. The man, who looked like he'd spent his entire life working under the Poggibonsi sun, his face weathered and tanned, wearing a classic straw hat, tugged gently on the rope. "Avanti, Isabella," he coaxed, his voice patient but firm. "Die. Come on." Isabella the donkey merely flicked an ear dismissively. Leo watched the small drama unfold, a tiny spark igniting in his weary brain. This man looked like he belonged here, like he knew the village inside out. He was practical, dealing with a stubborn donkey. Maybe, just maybe, he'd understand something simple, something visual. It was a long shot, born of pure desperation. But what did he have to lose? His dignity was already slightly crumpled, his stomach was actively complaining, and his quest was stalled at the grumpy fish. He rummaged in his backpack for the small notebook and pen he always carried for sketching or jotting down observations. His artistic skills were rudimentary at best, closer to cave paintings than Renaissance art, but he gave it his all. He drew a large, conspicuously round shape, the bun. He added a few curved lines inside, hoping to suggest fluffiness. Then, above it he drew a circle, and from that circle he drew thick lines radiating outwards, his universal, hopefully understandable symbol for the sun. He held his breath and held the notebook up towards the farmer, trying to look hopeful and not completely insane. The farmer paused his gentle tug-of-war with Isabella and peered curiously at Leo's masterpiece. He looked closely at the round shape. He looked at the radiating sun symbol above it. He glanced at his donkey, Isabella, who had decided the fountain wasn't so scary after all, and was now attempting to nibble on a geranium protruding from a nearby window box. The farmer looked back at the drawing, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He muttered something under his breath, possibly about strange tourists and hungry donkeys. Then, his face suddenly lit up, as if Leo's terrible drawing had unlocked a hidden meaning. He slapped his dusty trouser leg with emphasis. "Ah, ho capito! Paglia!" he exclaimed, nodding with sudden enthusiastic understanding. "Paglia, see." He pointed first at Leo's drawing of the sun, then gestured broadly around at the warm air. "Sol caldo," he said, confirming the heat. Then he patted Isabella the donkey affectionately on the neck. "Per l'asino, Paglia!" He pointed down a narrow, winding alleyway that snaked away from the main square, an alley Leo hadn't noticed before. "Si, Paglia, di là, vieni!" He seemed absolutely convinced he knew what Leo needed and where to find it, even gesturing for Leo to follow him and Isabella. Paglia. Leo stared at the farmer, then back at his drawing. He quickly fumbled for his phone again, bypassing the poetic translation app and going straight for the dictionary function. Paglia, meaning straw. Straw? The farmer, looking at his drawing of a legendary, delicious sunshine bun, had concluded that Leo was looking for straw for the donkey, because the sun was hot and donkeys needed straw. Leo looked back at his drawing. Okay, viewed generously, maybe the radiating lines looked a bit like straw, Maybe the bun itself resembled a small haystack. The logic was bizarre, yet somehow within the farmer's world of donkeys and sunshine, it made a twisted kind of sense. Leo felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up. This was it, the absolute peak of language barrier absurdity. Asking for a gourmet pastry and being offered animal feed. He almost turned away, ready to finally admit defeat and find that croissant. But then he paused. The farmer had pointed down a new direction, a narrow, unexplored alleyway leading away from the chaos of the square, away from the dead end, away from the lamp shop. And the farmer had seemed so certain, so genuinely helpful in his straw-based misunderstanding. What if? It was crazy, but what if this ridiculous misunderstanding was the key? What if the path to Sunshine Buns was disguised as a quest for donkey fodder? What did he have left to lose? "Okay, Isabella," Leo muttered under his breath, addressing the donkey who was now trying to eat the farmer's hat tassel. "Let's go see the straw." He mustered another smile for the farmer. Grazie mille," he said, deciding not to actually follow the man and his hungry donkey, but to investigate the indicated alleyway himself. Perhaps the farmer's internal map, even when interpreting bun as straw, pointed towards something useful. It was the craziest idea he'd had all day, which, given the morning's events, was saying something. He turned and plunged into the narrow passage. Instantly, the noise of the piazza faded behind him, replaced by a cool, quiet stillness. The buildings on either side were tall and leaned inward slightly, creating a welcome shade. The cobblestones here felt older, smoother, worn down by centuries of quiet passage. The air felt different, too. Cooler, calmer. And then he smelled it faintly at first, almost imperceptible, a delicate scent weaving through the cool air. Warm, sweet, unmistakably yeasty, with a subtle, tantalizing hint of citrus. Not straw. Definitely not straw. It was the smell of baking, the smell of hope, rising like warm dough. His heart gave a hopeful leap. He walked faster, following his nose now instead of vague directions or misinterpretations. The scent grew stronger, with every step, richer, warmer, drawing him onwards like an invisible, fragrant thread. He rounded a slight bend in the alley, and the smell became almost intoxicating. Lemon, sugar, warm bread. And there it was, tucked away, almost hidden from the world in a tiny, unassuming corner where the alley opened slightly, was a small, utterly charming shopfront. No flashy signs, just a simple hand-painted wooden board hanging above the door. Forno Dolce Sole, the Sweet Sun Bakery. Leo stopped, staring. It was real. It wasn't a myth or a hallucination brought on by hunger and frustration. Through the clean glass window, he could see rows upon rows of beautiful pastries, croissants, biscuits, and breads, all looking perfectly baked. And right there, in the center of the display, arranged on a simple wooden tray, glowing softly, under the warm interior light, were the buns. They were even more magnificent than he'd imagined. Large, perfectly round, golden brown, generously dusted with powdered sugar, and featuring a cheerful swirl of bright yellow filling, sunshine yellow, peeking out from the center. The Sunshine Buns. They existed. He felt a ridiculous surge of triumph, like an explorer discovering a lost city. He practically floated towards the door, his earlier exhaustion forgotten. He pushed it open. A small, old-fashioned bell jingled merrily above him, announcing his arrival. The air inside was thick with the heavenly aroma of baking, warmth, and sugar. It wrapped around him like a comforting hug. Behind a simple wooden counter, piled high with more delicious-looking creations, stood an elderly baker. He had flour, dusting his apron, and kind, smiling eyes that crinkled at the corners. Leo didn't even think about his phrasebook, his app, or his disastrous attempts at communication. Words felt unnecessary now. He simply pointed, his finger trembling slightly with excitement towards the tray of glorious buns in the window. His eyes were wide with reverence and relief. "Uno," he managed, his voice slightly hoarse, holding up one finger. Then, emboldened by the sheer beauty of the bun and the success of his ridiculously convoluted quest, he risked the name, adding hopefully, "Sunshine Bun?" The baker looked at the buns, then at Leo's ecstatic expression. A warm chuckle rumbled in his chest. He nodded, his smile widening. "Ah, see, the Sunshine Bun," he replied, his Italian accent coloring surprisingly clear English. "Our little secret. Not so easy to find, eh?" Leo laughed, a genuine, relieved laugh this time. "No, not easy at all." He paid for his bun, his precious, hard-won treasure, carefully taking the warm paper bag from the baker. He thanked him profusely. "Grazie mille, it's beautiful." Basking in the warmth of the bakery and his success, he stepped back out into the quiet alleyway, clutching the bag like it contained gold. He found a clean stone step nearby, sat down in the shade, and carefully took out the Sunshine Bun. It was still warm. He took a bite. It was perfect. Absolutely, utterly perfect. The dough was soft, light, slightly sweet. The yellow swirl was a bright, tangy lemon cream, cutting through the richness perfectly. It was sweet, but not too sweet, comforting, delicious. It tasted like sunshine, like happiness, like victory over linguistic adversity. It was, without a doubt, the best bun he had ever eaten in his entire life. As he sat there, slowly savoring every single crumb, Leo reflected on the morning's chaotic journey. The vague directions from the pigeon-loving Nona, the well-meaning but utterly wrong lamp suggestion from the scooter enthusiast, the hilarious Solar Joy Buns incident with the teenagers, and culminating in the farmer who mistook his artwork for a request for donkey straw. It had been confusing, frustrating, and bordering on the surreal. At several points he'd been ready to give up entirely, and yet here he was. Sunshine Bun achieved. He realized with a smile that the language barrier hadn't just been an obstacle to overcome. It had been the very engine of the adventure. It had forced him off the beaten path, led him through hidden corners of the charming village he might never have seen otherwise. It had created encounters, awkward, funny, memorable, with locals he wouldn't have interacted with. The sheer absurdity of the misunderstandings made the final discovery of this hidden gem, this perfect little bakery, feel infinitely more rewarding. Sometimes, he mused, getting thoroughly lost in translation was precisely the best way to find something wonderful and unexpected. You just had to keep going, keep trying, and maybe be prepared to ask for straw along the way. He finished the last crumb of the Sunshine Bun, feeling completely content, full, happy, and with another fantastic, ridiculous travel story to tell. He wondered what linguistic adventures awaited him tomorrow. Maybe he'd try asking for directions to the nearest library. Who knew? He might end up discovering the world's best gelato stand or a hidden Roman ruin. In Poggibonsi, it seemed, anything was possible when you got your words wonderfully wrong. Wow, what a journey! Leo finally got his Sunshine Bun, and what an adventure it took to get there. From pigeons to lamps to solar joy buns and straw for donkeys. It shows how wonderfully confusing and ultimately funny language barriers can be. He certainly learned that persistence, and perhaps a good sense of humor, are essential tools for any traveler. Now, to help you lock in some of the useful words and phrases from Leo's extended adventure, here's our key vocabulary section. Many of these appeared frequently, so listening out for them really helps your comprehension. Key vocabulary, repeated throughout. Adventurer, someone who seeks exciting or unusual experiences. Leo considered himself an adventurer of the everyday. Bakery, a place where bread, cakes, pastries are made and sold. Leo's quest was to find the hidden bakery. Phrasebook, a small book with common phrases translated into another language. His well-worn phrasebook offered basic sentences. Translation app, a mobile application that translates language. The translation app provided a very poetic, funny phrase. Pronunciation, the way words are spoken. Leo's pronunciation often caused confusion. Directions, instructions on how to reach a destination. He received several sets of confusing directions. Gestures, body movements used to express meaning. His gestures were misinterpreted spectacularly. Confused, confusion, being unable to understand clearly. Both Leo and the locals experienced confusion. Misunderstandings, failing to understand correctly. The story is built on a series of comical misunderstandings. Locales, people living in a specific place. He interacted with several bemused locals. Village, a small community in a country area. Poggibonsi was a charming, labyrinthine village. Determined, firmly decided to do something. Leo was determined despite the setbacks, frustrated and frustration, feeling annoyed because you can't achieve something. Leo felt growing frustration with each failed attempt. Finally, happening after a long time or delay, he finally smelled then found the bakery. Delicious, having a very pleasant taste or smell. The Sunshine Bun was incredibly delicious. Optimism, optimistic, hopeful and confident about the future. Leo's optimism kept him going. Absurd, absurdity, wildly unreasonable, illogical or inappropriate. He recognized the absurdity of the situations. Quest, a long search for something. He thought of finding the buns as a quest. Legendary, mythical, remarkable enough to be famous. Very well. Known, fictional, or not existing. The buns were described as legendary or mythical. Hidden, kept out of sight. Concealed. The bakery was hidden away in an alley. How many of those did you recognize? Try to use a few in your own English conversations. Or writing this week. Did you enjoy this longer version of Leo's story? Could you relate to his struggles? Share your own funny language barrier experiences or thoughts about the story in the comments below. We genuinely love hearing from you. If this story helped your English learning journey and gave you a good laugh, please show your support by giving this video a big thumbs up and share it with anyone else you know who's learning English the fun way. And of course, if you haven't joined our community yet, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on more story-driven English adventures every single week. Thanks so much for watching and spending this time with us. Keep learning, keep smiling, and see you in the next story. Bye for now.